is your first time here, welcome. We are very excited to be able to have a very special Power Hour today, and obviously this program and luncheon has grown so well. We're getting the attention of the United States Senate, and we're happy for that. So we're glad that you could be here, many of you chamber members and our top investors and local elected officials, and so we appreciate you being engaged in our community at this opportunity we get to have Senator McConnell here as he can be here in our community and hear from you and get a chance to talk about some of the things that are going on, important things that are going on at an unprecedented time in our country. So very happy for this event to be here today. I want to thank our office manager, Heidi Ochiltree, for putting this together. You know, these things have to come together on a short notice, and so without her being able to drop everything while we've got other events going on, we're just very blessed to have her working with us, and so thank you, Heidi. Also, we have a lot of elected officials in the audience, and I don't want to go through and name every individual one, but if you are an elected official, we have magistrates here and councilmen and our jailers here and whatnot. Would you just stand so we could acknowledge you? We also have, you know, our community is really experiencing some unprecedented growth, and the growth of our business community is something we're very excited about and something we're responsible for in our office. But none of that growth could happen without a lot of elected leadership at our local level, at our state level, and at our national level. And so we're very thankful to the elected officials who've been supportive. We have tens of millions of dollars of new infrastructure that are going into this community to help foster the growth that we're seeing all around us. And so we have a lot of thanks for that. Our Speaker of the House, David Osborne, is here. Thank you, Speaker Osborne. Senator Ernie Harris is at a meeting. He's on his way here. He's going to be here shortly. I want to thank him. Also, Representative Jason Nemes is here. Jason will be speaking on our panel discussion next week at our OSED Talks, where we tackle the hemp and the medical marijuana topic, so that our business community can be informed on the pluses and minuses of those issues and what we can expect moving forward. So we appreciate his investment of time here. And of course, we have the Mayor of LaGrange, John Black, and the Mayor of Crestwood, Jim Kramer, is here as well. And so I'm not going to slow down this event at all. I just want to thank you for being here, and thanks for your engagement in our chamber, and thanks for all of your work that you do to help make us a better chamber. We also have a lot of board members here I'm seeing now as I'm going through the list of people I'm forgetting, so thank you for our board members for being here and being engaged as well. And so to introduce the senator, I've asked our County Judge Executive, David Vogel, if he would come up and introduce the senator.
Thank you, David. Thank you, David. We're happy to have a very important person here with us today who, in my opinion, is definitely in tune with Oldham County. He's done a tremendous job representing our state and our county. Mitch McConnell was elected to the U.S. Senate Majority Leadership position first in 2014 and again in 2016. He's only the second Kentuckian ever to serve as a majority leader in the U.S. Senate, and he was first unanimously elected by his colleagues as a Republican leader in 2006. And he's the longest serving Senate Republican leader in the history of the United States. So that is a tremendous accomplishment. In 2015 and again in 2019, he's been named by Time magazine as one of the 100 most influential people in the world. Another tremendous honor and something that we're very proud of. Senator McConnell serves as a member of the the Senate Appropriations Committee, Agriculture and Rules Committee. He also has 3 daughters. Sometimes that gets lost in the shuffle, but they've all grown up. We were looking at a picture from a parade he was in Oldham County in, 1983, you know, and some of us were there, and he was too, and someone was nice enough to give him a picture. Before we begin today, I want to extend a personal thank you today for supporting the President's nomination of Gina Haspel to be CIA Director. If any of you saw the Senate Judiciary Committee hearings, that was one of the most disgusting displays I've ever seen since I've been tuned in on politics. Senator Kamala Harris and Senator Cory Booker and Senator Blumenthal, a guy who lied about his service in Vietnam, they treated our fellow Kentuckian and a real patriot in the most disgusting and boorish ways. Senator McConnell stuck up for our fellow Kentuckian, and I'm very proud of you for doing that, and I think you did the country a tremendous service. There's a lot to talk about today, and of course, we all know that this morning Attorney General Barr released his report on the Mueller report, so the Senator may address that briefly. Also this month, there have been more people come across the southwest border without documentation or invitation than there are who live in Oldham County. We have 65,000 people live in this county, and more people have come in from the beginning of this month than there are who live in this county. That's something that needs to be addressed and taken care of, obviously. The economy is doing very well under President Trump, and a lot of minority groups that have had employment problems in the past are at really full employment or doing well. And that's despite the comment from a former bartender in New York who's now a congressman who thinks that the unemployment is low because everybody has 2 jobs. Well, they don't. It's another reason. That person has a degree in economics, I'm told, as well, and apparently she got it out of a box of Cracker Jacks. Senator McConnell is also, of course, married to Elaine Chao, Secretary of Transportation. Wonderful Elaine. We always love it when Elaine is here, Senator, and we're very pleased to have you. But you tell her we miss her as well today. And of course, I want to ask you a question to begin here. Since you are, I did say Time Magazine said you're one of the 100 most influential people in the world, but I'm just wondering if the same thing happens to you when you go home at night that happens to me, and that I'm asked to take out the garbage. But Senator Mitch McConnell.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, I clean up, she takes the garbage out. Yeah, but we have an understanding. It's good to be back in Oldham County, and I don't have to remind you what great leadership you have here. Judge Vogel just wore me out here, sitting at the table about various projects that are going on here that he's proud of, and justly so. And had a few ideas about how I might be able to be helpful. Can you imagine that? And I couldn't be prouder of my good friend, longtime friend, David Osborne, being the leader of my party in the House. David, we're really proud of you. And Jason Nemeth does a great job of representing you in the legislature. It's good to see the mayors here. You know, I got my start in local government. I had the same job Judge Vogel did back when Jefferson County still had a county judge. And so I've enjoyed the joys of local government. There's always another pothole. I see your jailer here. There's always somebody in jail who's incorrectly incarcerated from whom you hear relatives calling in the middle of the night. In fact, in a big city like Louisville, years ago, I can remember a guy running for mayor when I was young, saying during the campaign, "I'll have a listed phone number, and I'll be available anytime." And so sure enough, shortly after he got elected, about 2 a.m. in the morning, the phone rang. He answered it, and it was a guy who's obviously inebriated. And he said, "Is this the mayor?" I said, "Yeah, it's the mayor." I said, "By golly, you do have a listed phone number, and you are available. I want you to know I got a pothole in front of my house that's been driving me crazy for years. And you said you'd be responsive, and I wanted to let you know about it." So the sleepy mayor wrote down his name, his address, tried to get back to sleep. Went to the office the next morning, called up the director of the works department. He said, there's a pothole out in front of so-and-so and so-and-so. I promised the people of Louisville I'd be responsive to their needs. I want you to go out and fix that pothole and call me back and let me know you did it. So sure enough, he got a call, pothole fixed. That night he set his alarm for 2 a.m. And he called him up. And he said, there, you SOB, we fixed your pothole. Now, you mayors, I know you've been tempted to do something like that, but you've restrained yourself over the years. I tell that story only to remind you that I'm familiar with the joys of local government. For the last 3 decades, I've been somewhat removed from pothole fixing, and I thought today I would give you an update on my current job. You know, I'm frequently asked what being the majority leader of the Senate is like. I think I've finally come up with the perfect answer. It's a little bit like being a groundskeeper at a cemetery. Everybody's under you, but no one is listening. So what is it the majority leader gets to do that the other 99 do not? It's to decide what we're going to do, to set the agenda. Doesn't guarantee the outcome, but it certainly sets the course. And sometimes the most important things you do are what you decide not to do. And the most consequential decision I've made in my tenure was a decision not to do something, and that was the decision not to fill the Supreme Court vacancy in the middle of the presidential election of 2016. So, when I realized election night that Donald Trump had won the election, which I would not have predicted, and I noticed that I was still the majority leader and that we still had a majority in the House, the first thing that came to my mind was the Supreme Court, obviously. The second thing that came in my mind was courts in general, because remember, the U.S. Senate's in the personnel business. The House isn't. There are 1,200 executive branch appointments that come to us for confirmation, all kinds. But among them, the most important, obviously, are lifetime appointments to the courts. And so I decided, as a matter of priority, that if the administration got us well-qualified nominees quickly, that'd be the first thing that we did. And so I'm here to report that we not only confirmed 2 new Supreme Court justices, which you followed closely, but 30 U.S. Circuit Court appointments in the first 2 years, which is a record quick pace for any administration in history. 3 of those happen to be from Kentucky. We're on the 6th Circuit, which is with Tennessee, Kentucky, Ohio, and Michigan. Most complex litigation doesn't make it past the circuit courts. The Supreme Court takes just a tiny percentage of courts every year. So I would call that the most significant thing we did that will have the longest lasting impact on the country. The administration's done an excellent job of sending people up. What kind of people are they sending up? Well, they're sending up men and women who believe in the quaint notion that maybe a judge ought to try to follow the law. You wouldn't think that'd be controversial, but actually it is. Because our friends on the left have always felt that judiciary was just another way to legislate. And that creates a great division among lawyers in the country about what is the role of a judge. And Justice Scalia, who is, in my view, the most consequential Supreme Court justice since John Marshall, the original Chief Justice, renewed, I think, what we all thought, going back to the founders, the role of a judge was supposed to be. Scalia used to say, you're not a very good judge if occasionally you're not uncomfortable with the outcome you reach, but it's not your personal opinion. It's to try to, as accurately as you can, read and apply the law that's been passed. He also said, if you want to make policy, why don't you run for office? That's not what we do here. So I bring this up to make the point that those are the kind of men and women the administration's been sending up. We've been confirming them rapidly. We've done 7 more this year, so we're at 37 circuit judges. But that's not all we did in those 2 years, because my thoughts then went to just how unusual it is at the federal government level to have all three branches, the White House, the House, and the Senate. You may not know this, but you can go back 100 years, and the Republican Party's only had all three 20 of the 100 years. So I thought to myself, this may not last very long, and it didn't, you noticed. We better do as much as we can, as quick as we can, to try to move the country right of center. So the other things in the previous Congress that I thought were extremely significant: comprehensive tax reform for the first time in 30 years, significant regulatory relief because we felt the Obama years greatly overregulated the economy. We took a big chunk out of the Dodd-Frank law to free up medium and small-sized banks and credit unions so they could loan again. Add all that up, and we've got 50-year low unemployment, 3% GDP growth last year for the first time in at least 10 years, not a single year of 3% growth during the Obama years. The economy, by and large, is in excellent shape, and our policies, I think, have produced the healthy economy that we have today. Now, what do I try to do over and above the national issues? You know, I'm the only one of the 4 congressional leaders that's not from either New York or California. So I view my job as to try to look out for Middle America, and in particular, look out for Kentucky. So how does my job as Majority Leader help you, help Kentucky? At the top of the list, I would put hemp. Hemp. I just this morning introduced a bill some of you already read about to raise the age for the purchase of tobacco products from 18 to 21 at the national level. We have an epidemic of nicotine consumption, either through cigarettes or through vaping, in high schools and even middle schools, not only in our state, but around the world, around the country. This is not going to prevent every single incident, but it's going to make it a lot harder for 18-year-olds to purchase these delivery devices and redistribute them to younger kids they're in contact with in high school and college. I'm going to introduce that bill when I go back a week from Monday when we're back in session, and it underscores the transition in our state from tobacco to something new. When I went to the Senate, we had at least some tobacco grown, some, in 119 of 120 counties. Over 100,000 people were involved in one way or another, either by producing it or by owning the quota and leasing it out to someone else. Clearly, it was time to transition to something else. So I was in the position 12 years ago, actually 2004, more than 12 years ago, to put into law the tobacco buyout. It was funded by assessments on tobacco products. And what it did over a 10-year period was to compensate tobacco growers for the value of their quota. You see, the quota had an actual economic value. If you had a farm and you had a quota, it was part of your tax bill, your property tax bill, because it added value. It was an asset created by the government itself back in the 30s, ironically, when the other Kentuckian who was Majority Leader of the Senate, Alvin Barkley, was Majority Leader. So this asset was assigned by the government to the property, and I thought you deserve to be compensated for the asset. And put it into law. It gradually, over a 10-year period, compensated the growers for their loss of the asset and value on their property. In the meantime, tobacco continues to decline, and as a result of that, we've only got a few thousand Kentuckians now involved in producing tobacco. Why do I think that has a public health impact? Well, if you work at the Ford plant, don't you drive a Ford? And if you work over at the Toyota plant, you drive a Toyota. There's no question that there was a sort of loyalty to the product off of which people made a living over the years, and I think it contributed to the fact, not the only factor, but certainly contributed to the fact that we had a lot more tobacco use in this state historically than a lot of other states. And we all know the results of that. Tobacco-related health problems are higher here than other places. So what comes next? Well, in the previous Farm Bill, 5 years ago, I inserted a provision that allowed pilot projects, because remember, hemp was considered a controlled substance under federal law, going back to right after World War II. So it was treated like this more controversial cousin that we've all heard of, that some states are actually legalizing that, but that's not what we're involved in. We're talking about industrial hemp. The pilot project showed that there was a good deal of interest in Kentucky, particularly among younger farmers. And so in this year's Farm Bill, which the President signed into law in December, I did the following. Again, an example of how my being in the job I'm in benefits our state. I called up the chairman of the Agriculture Committee and I said, I've got an industrial hemp legalization provision. Would you be willing to put it in what we call the chairman's mark, where the bill starts? He said, of course. I wasn't surprised. So it came in, it went in initially, came out of the committee, and amazingly enough, nobody offered an amendment to take it out. Second, it was not in the House-passed Farm Bill, so the House passed a different version. And when you have two different versions, these guys can tell you from the state government, you have a conference to work out the differences before they go back to each house. Who appoints the conferees? I do. Who did I appoint? Myself. It was not in the House bill, but Congressman Jamie Comer, who used to be Ag Commissioner here, is now a member of Congress. So I called up the Speaker and I said, why don't you put Jamie Comer on the House conference? He said, that's a good idea. So nobody ever made an effort to take it out. The reason I make this point is there are certain advantages to Kentucky having someone like me in this job, because I allow us to punch above our weight. Because over in the House, it's population. Population. The power in the House is where the people live. California, New York, Florida, Texas. So my being in the position I'm in, I think really helps Kentucky. I view myself as the guy that looks after Middle America. And I do on a daily basis. And the most important state in Middle America is the Commonwealth of Kentucky. So the national issues, I try to set the agenda in a responsible way, looking out for Kentucky along the way. And the final point I want to make is this. You're all watching the presidential election. You can't get away from it. I got colleagues all over the place running for president. So what are you looking at the other side? I can tell you, for the first time in my political life, and no longer how long you've been alive, for the first time in your lifetime, we're having a debate in this country about the virtues of free enterprise, about whether America ought to be a socialist country. I never thought we'd be debating something as fundamental as that, the underpinning of our very system, like we are. And it's not just a 28-year-old congresswoman from New York. I got 5 Senate colleagues, 5 of them, who signed up for the Green New Deal, which is the biggest job killer you could ever imagine, that would get you out of your automobiles, have you redesigning your house, and have the government clamp down on the economy in a truly outrageous way. I decided maybe we ought to vote on it in the Senate. And we did. Only 4 Democrats had the courage to vote no on the Green New Deal. Only 4. The rest of them voted present, which is a vote, in my view, yes. So what I want you to understand is this is not some fringe movement over there. This is much, much broader. You've heard about Medicare for all. It ought to be called Medicare for none. I'll bet most of you in the room have private health insurance if you work. 180 million Americans get their health insurance from work. It would be illegal under Medicare for none. And with regard to Medicare recipients, if you're on Medicare now, you paid for it over the years, and you're now receiving the benefits of having paid for it over the years, it would be drained by the addition of all these new people. And how they would pay for it? There aren't enough millionaires and billionaires to pick up the tab. Believe me, there aren't enough. So, as you watch this, my prediction is whoever ultimately wins the Democratic nomination will say, oh, I'm a capitalist. But the best way to look at it is not what you call yourself, but what you support. And I'll bet you the Democratic nominee is going to be for the Green New Deal and for Medicare for all. So we're going to have a referendum next year on what America ought to be like. And don't buy the notion that this is not a compassionate society. At least half of what we spend every year at the federal level is designed to help people. People who are elderly, people who are unable to keep up. Huge amount of what we spend is to help people who are in a position not to be as productive as others. So don't you be guilt-ridden about America neglecting those who are least fortunate. But we want to have a society that presents opportunity. You know, virtually all of us at some point back in our family lineage are the sons and daughters, the descendants of risk takers. People who got out from some foreign country to come to America for no guarantees at all, but for opportunity, for freedom of religion, for example, to live your own life. One of the most inspirational stories I'm married to that you're familiar with. Came here at age 8, not speaking a word of English. Family couldn't even afford an airline ticket. She came over here on a freighter and went into the 3rd grade, not speaking a word of English. She's now the only Kentuckian in a president's cabinet since World War II, and she's done it twice. That kind of thing is extremely important in our country. So as we have these immigration debates, let me just say, this has been a big challenge. The president is entirely correct about the crisis at the border. He's also correct that we need to adjust some of the laws because we have to be able to deal with illegal immigration in order to continue legal immigration, which has been extremely important to our country going back to the beginning. But when it's all added up, we want to have an opportunity society. There has to be still a place for ingenuity, for the chance to better yourself. Yes, to make more money. What's wrong with that? I never envied a guy down the street with a bigger house. I say, congratulations. You had a better idea. You're living a better life. You ought to have a chance to be rewarded for your efforts. It's something to be proud of. So, that's, in my view, going to be on the ballot next year, all across America. If I'm still the majority leader of the Senate after the 2020 election, none of this stuff is going to pass. None of it. There'll be a stop sign to this kind of legislation if it comes over from the House. So I view my mission next year is to protect this country from that kind of impulse. I hope the American people will re-elect the president. That would help solve the problem. But either way that goes, if I'm still the majority leader of the Senate, none of this stuff is going to happen. We are not going to willingly preside over the socialization of America. I guarantee you. Now, the reason all these reporters are here today, as you can imagine, is not because they were thrilled to come out to Oldham County and see all of you. You know it probably has to do with the news of the day this morning. And so I'm going to have a separate press conference with them somewhere near here after we finish up. But just let me say this about the report this morning. If you were a lawyer, regardless of party, in Washington, D.C., and people ask you, what do you think of Bob Mueller, Rob Rosenstein, and Bill Barr, what do you think? All three of them, sterling reputations. All three of them about as close to apolitical as you can imagine. Rod Rosenstein, by the way, was appointed U.S. Attorney in Maryland by a Democratic president, and they have 2 Democratic senators. So you could not have asked for more objective individuals to be involved in this process that we've all heard about on a virtual daily basis for 2 long years. So I don't want you to buy any notions that somehow any of these people are political hacks. They've never run for anything. They have sterling reputations. I can't imagine any one of the 3 of them would jeopardize their own reputation and think about not being able to sleep at night by not handling this extremely controversial and complex investigation in a straight-up way. What I think our friends on the other side will do will be to try to destroy all of their reputations because they don't like what they're hearing. You shouldn't buy that. This investigation could not have been handled in a better way. So I'll withhold the rest of what I may have to say until these guys are across the street. Let me wrap it up by thanking you for the opportunity to be here. Congratulations again on the great growth that you've had here in Oldham County. It's a wonderful place to live. The reason I know that is a number of my staff live here and enjoy it every minute. Thanks so much for the opportunity to be here.